Good Monday morning. Going to riff on a question. Got a question via Facebook Messenger, which I don't recommend because I rarely look at Messenger, but they didn't have my email, evidently. My email is right out there. Anybody can find it, patrick@oursafeharbor.com. So might want to use that. Also, you can find me, well, pretty much everywhere. You can get me through the website as well, oursafeharbor.com. Anyway, through that, a few texts and the like, the question really boils down to this. The man feels that there's been a lot of damage done to relationships, to families, and by this idea that the man, I'm the man of the house. That's the phrase that he used. And I happen to know this fellow, and he's a really, really good man. And I know he is very, very concerned about what he sees in his children and grandchildren, the culture in which we have been raised. And there are a lot of people out there who are screaming on all extreme sides of the male-female question. There are so many books on toxic masculinity, which does exist, but it's become rather like the phrase codependent became back in the 1980s. Those of you that don't remember, I was in the therapeutic field back then, peripherally, but still there, absorbing all of the information. And we used to, when codependency first became a thing, they gave a name to it. It suddenly, everybody was codependent, and everything was codependence, which meant nothing was. You see, let's do it a different way. Let's say that I were to hold up my can here of water and said, this is blue. You would say, no, that's obviously black. And I go, oh, no, this is blue. Then I point to my shirt and say, this is blue. And I point to the wall and say, that is blue. Eventually pointing to everything, saying it is blue. The word blue no longer means anything. We've done this with words, and we've done this with diagnoses. We did it in the 80s with Epstein-Barr, and we started naming everything, every fatigue after that, instead of really pulling back and trying to figure out what was going on. We've done the same with the word love. And so when someone yells feminism or toxic masculinity or the like, it is meant to shut down all argument and discussion and to put up a wall between you and the other person so that nobody can be changed or moved. With all of that said, there absolutely has been taught in Christian churches for for centuries, that men are in charge of the house. Now, in some ways, that is true. The scripture does give a leadership role to the man. But as we've seen when we've gone through Ephesians chapter 5, we've taken a look at what scripture says, that his leadership is done by sacrifice, care, and by giving the utmost possible positive spin on whatever he receives in return. Please go to our midweek Bible studies and look up where I was in Ephesians chapter 5 if you want to have a look at that, or if you have follow-up questions. But he is to treat his wife like Christ treats the church, as if there are no faults, as if there's no blemish or any such thing. He is to do what Christ did for the church and to give himself up for her. So this leadership role is not dominance. In fact, the first Ephesians 5:21, the verse before all of this discussion of male-female, and actually it's part of it, but we tend to separate it out as a separate paragraph, says that we submit to one another out of our reverence for Christ. So submission is something male and female are to do in the house. And dominance is not a target. We are not looking for dominance. If you're walking in, guys, being Fred Flintstone at the end of the day, saying, where's my supper? And leave me alone, kids. And you've got a real twisted concept of what it means to be a man. Men are the ones who do manly things, such as, well, for example, joining the military, putting themselves on the front line. You might think, well, what does that have to do with anything? It means that they are setting themselves up to die first. so that others don't have to. There are jobs that men do that women are not that good at. And this is going to get me in trouble. But the fact is, physics are physics. You can't change that. And on television, you'll see a skinny lady who's probably 5'3", 5'4", maybe weighs 110, 115 pounds, but she's super trained in martial arts. And therefore, she can deck everybody. And she knocks over this 250-pound guy with a punch or the like. No, physics won't let that happen. If you did connect as hard enough to knock down a guy, you would have shattered your hand, shattered it, not just broken it. And you would also have dislocated your elbow. Physics are physics. But we have this myth that women can do anything men can do, and men can pretend to be women. No, we're different on purpose, but we're not dominant. We are not to dominate the other, not to dominate anybody. We are to become like Christ, which is a servant mindset. Ladies, on the other hand, it always annoys me when people say, and they mean it to be humorous and like, oh yeah, we all know that. Somebody will say, well, if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. That's dominance. You're hunting for dominance. Now, the reason that that's very often true is because men will bend over backwards and they will work extra hours and they will go to the line time after time trying to win your favor. And yes, sex is a big part of that. And so women very frequently use sex as a weapon by withholding affection or by shaming the husband for wanting sex, and they become dominant through that. So yeah, there's a real problem with the man of the house mentality, but there's also a problem with the if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy mentality, because you're searching for dominance in a religion that is modeled after a servant. Jesus said, you will have those around you who claim to be in charge of you for your benefit, but among you it shall not be so. We don't do it that way. We don't play those games. We are to be marked by kindness and goodness. Now, this is being recorded a few weeks after, it's being posted rather, about a month after I did a sermon. It's the last sermon in July called Kindness and Goodness. I'm not going to do a half hour here, but the kindness is the things that you do to your kind, within the reach, the arc of your arms and hands, so the people up close to you. Goodness is an attitude and a flavor of your life that even extends far beyond your person. For example, if my brothers in Tanzania, my brothers and sisters there, they need help with something and I send them a check, that's goodness. But if I go to Tanzania and I take care of a beggar on the street, or I hand some money to a preacher who is starving, that is kindness because I'm that close. Well, you're not going to be closer, or you shouldn't be closer, than to those in your family. And so not marked by domination, not marked by marking your territory, not marked by I have my rights and my needs, but rather by kindness and goodness and sacrifice. The fruits of the Spirit are supposed to grow in your marriage as well. And it is appalling to me to see how many men and women don't give their best to the marriage. They don't seek out the way to help the other person grow the fruits of the Spirit as they're growing the fruits of the Spirit, but rather they buy into the cultural mentality of winners and losers, of people in charge, of, I don't care what you say, this is what I say. They buy into that conflict mentality that our world wants to keep us stirred up in. And the book of James tells us time and time again, it doesn't work. He says, where are all these arguments coming from? Where are all this fighting among you? Haven't you noticed it doesn't work? Well, you might be thinking, yes, it does, because, I get home and my supper's ready, and I get home and my wife's ready, and I get home and the kids are. You think you're winning? Or a wife might say, it's winning because if I want something, he doesn't mess with me, I go get it. If I want to do this, I do this. If I'm telling him mama's coming, You think you're winning? The relationship you could have had with your spouse, you spoiled it. You spoiled it for a game of dominance. And you lost all that love and laughter and joy that could have been. My father was a very dominating man in our family. I had no idea how dominating he was over my mother until after he passed. And my mother began to tell me stories after 60 some years of marriage that just absolutely broke my heart. Dominant to the point of absolutely timing her when she went to the store, and then grilling her on who did she look at, did she smile at anybody, and were there men looking at her. I mean, this went on the entire life. I knew he walked in saying, we're leaving in 5 minutes, or saying, I've got something to go to in a half hour, fix supper. That I grew up with. And I grew up with his dominance over us as kids, and I'll just speak for myself, over me. When my father died, I didn't cry for a while. And I finally found myself alone, because I'm an introvert and I need to be alone to process things. And I did cry. And I sobbed. And about halfway through that hard morning, I realized I wasn't crying that my father was dead. I was crying at the lost opportunity for a father and a son to bond, to enjoy each other, to appreciate and respect each other. That the possibility of ever having that relationship was gone, and gone forever. And there was nothing I could do. In heaven, relationships will be healed, but you know what I mean. He could have been so much happier if he had allowed people to move and breathe and be who they were. He could have been so much happier. But as it was, he moved every couple of years because he couldn't get along with the churches he even established. And that breaks my heart, because I know he wanted to do the right thing, but he had this mentality that the man was absolutely in charge of everything and could not be questioned. And I'm seriously, could not be questioned. Is that what you're doing? Even subtly, ladies, is that what you're doing? Even subtly? I'm aware you like to do things this way. And I'm aware that you may have learned it from your mom or your dad, that this is the only way to do things. But are you aware that you've married a completely different person, and they might need something different? I'll use an illustration here. Sometimes people will respond to this by saying, well, I give my best to my husband or to my wife. Do they know that? If you say, I'm giving, but they don't appreciate it, this is when you might want to back up and think, what does love look like to them? For example, I love going to aquariums, looking at sea life. I think God did some of his best work under the water. And it's fascinating, just endlessly fascinating. I do not want a fish tank. I do not want to care for it. I don't want the smell of it, the bubbling of the oxygen tubes and the like. I don't want one. But what if my wife were to say, well, I love you, so here's a fish tank. And I'm going, fish tanks aren't really. And then she comes and she puts another fish in it. And then she comes and she puts a little helmet guy in there. You get the point. And I'm going, this doesn't feel like love to me. Well, you're just being ungrateful. I'm doing the best I can do for you. Well, it could be that she thinks fish tanks are the best thing in the world, absolutely required in every household, or you're not good Christians. But if what you're giving doesn't feel like love to the other person, are you really being dominant? Man or woman, are you really being dominant rather than submissive? It's a thought. But let's end this by saying this. We're not cartoons, and we shouldn't live that way. We're not part of our culture. We're in the world, but we're not of the world. So let's not act like the rest of the world. Let's not be conflict-based. Let's not treat everything as if it is a game that we need to win. Let us not seek for dominance, but rather, as Scripture says, not seeking our own good, but the good of the others. So do the others need? How can I help them be the best they can be to where our relationship will be the best it can be? Don't rob yourself of joy by playing games to try to win a place, a position. Even if it makes you feel comfortable because now you're guarded and safe there. Yeah, you are, but you're more alone than you thought you were. Don't be alone. We don't need, if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. We don't need, I'm the man of the house. We don't need that. What we need is to behave like Jesus and to ask ourselves, how would Jesus respond faced with this? It's a fair question. Hope it answered this, but if it engendered more questions, email patrick@oursafeharbor.com. We appreciate those of you who support us with prayers, comments, with money. It's what feeds me, literally. I don't have food without it, or my other team members. And we're reaching all over the place. Please share these things. And if you disagree, let me know, but tell me why. And you might be right. I've been wrong before. In fact, sometimes I'm pretty good at being wrong. Much love to you.